Hey there everybody, fan with too much time here, coming back at you with a new reaction. This time, to the Vraks teaser trailer. Okay, so listen, when I got turned on to the Vraks animation, I did not know that there was just that one episode, like the setup episode, the departure, the prologue basically. It turns out there's no more than that. I thought that I was going to see more than that. I was under the impression that I had at least 1 or 2 episodes of this. No. Turns out that it's still in the works, still cooking from what it says in the description. So we're going to have to wait before we get more delicious Vraks. But while we wait, something has been released for us. A teaser trailer. So it's about 1 minute and 6 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and give it a look-see. And depending on what I do see, I may get more hyped than I already am, which is going to be pretty hard because like the initial Vraks trailer looked fucking great. So let's check it out now. It's too little. I need more! No. No! Okay. So, that was the Vraks teaser trailer. Tiny, itty-bitty little snippy-bitty little piece! I want more. Need more. Honestly, these animators blow my mind. I can only imagine what would have happened if I'd been born with a talent for animation instead of a talent for writing. Because, you know, I can write and it's good and fun, but to be able to make these things, actually make them, fucking incredible. Fucking incredible. Well, that was the Vraks teaser trailer, so let's move on to a little bit more from here. Hey there, fans! Alright, so that last bit was fun, but a little too short for a whole video. So we're gonna do one more Warhammer 40k related video, and the next one that was recommended to me on the initial asking post in my community section where I asked for videos to watch is this one. So I don't know what this is about. I have no idea about anything about it at all aside from the title. Literally nothing else about it do I know except for the person who recommended it. I believe that was Ricky4990. Ricky4990, I hope that's your name. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering it right, but I might not be. But if that is, then this is the video you recommended. Bring down the Imperium 40k special. Sounds like fucking heresy. Let's check it out.
40,000 subscribers. For most channels, nothing too special beyond a nice big even number. Certainly a positive in a big number of people, but nothing inherently neat or interesting about it. It's not even a milestone like 50k or anything like that. But for a Warhammer channel, that is the prime funny number. The big ticket number to become the Warhammer 40,000, and I finally reached it thanks to all of your support. Among other tired jokes, it's also the amount of money people spend on their armies and how long they spend painting them. And of course, for me personally, it's the amount of time I spend drooling over pictures of Karl Franz, Prince and Emperor, Elector Count of Reichland, and best Emperor in all of Warhammer. But now is not the time for fantasy. Now is the time for 40k, several thousand subs after I reach the number, because my timing skills are impeccable as always. I debated making this do or don't 40k, but my first video was somewhat along that vein, and also I just don't want to do another one of those yet because the next one will probably be a do or don't for Age of Sigmar. Incidentally, I hope you like goats. So for my 40k special, I thought I'd deliver the hottest take I could make, which probably isn't that hot, but whatever. Allow me to tell you, I think it would be best for the setting if the Imperium of Man finally collapsed and humanity truly fractured. Now, before I go on, I don't hate the Imperium. It's awesome. I'm only saying this because I noticed I've complained about Space Marines and the Imperium winning all the time a lot in my last few videos, so I felt like I should make it clear.
Okay, so the Imperium collapsing. I mean, that's a kind of a weird topic for me to even consider, because it comes into all these questions, and I guess he'll go ahead and cover them. But, like, first question that I have is, okay, the Imperium collapsed. What exactly does that mean? Like, various clusters or individual planets across the millions of worlds that compose the Imperium choose to either identify themselves as the new capital of the Imperium, a la the fall of Rome, or choose to disassociate themselves from the authority of the Imperium? Do they all still worship the Emperor? Is the Emperor still alive? Is the Astronomicon still intact? I mean, it's possible for the Imperium to collapse and Holy Terra to be isolated and just have enough resources to run itself, and the Astronomicon still continue. Hell, Terra could, in theory, collapse almost to its entirety, and so long as the center of the Imperial Palace is able to maintain itself, they could grind along and keep the Emperor going insofar as they are doing currently. So it's possible for Terra to even become 99% fucking empty of life and still the Astronomicon be run in a headless Imperium that may no longer exist. But we kind of really need that, the Astronomicon. It would be really difficult to... humanity is so powerful that even if we had to bunker down, if we could just solve the food problem, the supply problem that's kind of riddling mankind, then we could probably we could fortress up our worlds enough that mankind wouldn't go extinct anytime soon. But without the Astronomicon, long-distance warp travel is really fucked, if not entirely unavailable. And that's a freakingly huge problem. If the Astronomicon is still going, then another question I have is the faith, the Imperial faith, is it still predominant across the galaxy? Because just because the Imperium or the Imperial government has collapsed doesn't mean that the Imperial faith has collapsed. And this is also a great example of the fall of Rome here. The whole point is that the faith can definitely survive the nation. Is the faith surviving the nation? What is the shape of... like, what is going on? What would even make the Imperium come down definitively as opposed to suffer a few different schisms? Because that's one thing. Right now, a big part of what keeps the Imperium together is that it's not enough for 100 planets to go rogue at the same time and even be on the same side as each other. That's not even a real rebellion. That's like a little schism in accordance to the scale of 40K. Unless enough planets turn their back on the Imperium at the same time, or roughly in the same time scale, unless it's like a cascading event of rebellions that pick up and draft up after each other, going and throttling down along the line, all in a similar time scale, then the Imperium is simply so massive that it can retake any territory it loses because it is categorically, fucktuculously huge compared to any individual system that might try to rebel against it. Unless we're talking about, like, the Adepto Munitorum itself as an administration trying to go rogue, which almost isn't possible because the Adepto Munitorum is so spread out that you have to even ask yourself, okay, how would it even communicate across its whole organization that they are no longer going to serve the Imperium or going to try to usurp it or anything like that? That's part of the issue with trying to bring the Imperium down, is just that the Imperium is barely up. Not in that, like you might think, well, if it's barely up, it should be easy to take down. No, not like that. I mean that, like, very technically, the Imperium barely exists as more than an idea. The only reason the Imperium exists is because tons of planets across the entire galaxy identify themselves as being Imperial. And via that homogeneity of control, they give to the Imperial tithe and provide Imperial culture and associate to Imperial worship and all these things. They all do this virtually independently. Yes, nails that stick out will be hammered down, but if the vast majority of planets were not doing exactly as I said, the Imperium wouldn't be able to maintain itself. There are just not enough Space Marines, there aren't enough Guardsmen, and there aren't enough logistical resources to actually forcibly keep even 20% of the planets that compose the Imperium in line out of sheer actual applied force and not fear of it. It just can't do it. Not while it's also managing everything else that is happening at the same time. It's just not possible. So part of the problem with bringing down the Imperium is that to bring down the Imperium, you would have to spread a counterculture that would allow all these other planets to associate themselves as being not only of themselves, but not of the Imperium. And, I mean, we're talking about a government and religion that has been growing and building up for over 10,000 years now. 10,000 years. There's no contemporary government or religion that we have on Earth today that can match that. It's almost like you can't escape the Imperium. If a planet in the Imperium that has been in the Imperium for like the time that the Imperium has been around, more or less, if they try to split off from the Imperium, they will quickly find that so much of their recorded history, so many of their historical figures, so much of their culture, so much of everything, literally everything, has been tied into the Imperium and into Imperial culture, Imperial beliefs, Imperial systems, that it's not even really possible for them to break away and be independent. I mean, not culturally, not religiously, not historically. It's like the Imperium owns the history of your history of your history, because you have to really understand what 10,000 fucking years of contiguous ideological association would mean. It's not just tradition like we have today. It's hyper mega ultra chicken tradition. It's like archaeologists would be discovering Imperial ruins on planets that would have predated your civilization by so much. It just is almost inescapable. That's how fucking long it's been going, and how encrusted Imperial culture would be over everything. So I say all this and I ramble about this because it's a very interesting thing to consider how the Imperium would collapse, what form that collapse would take, how it comes about. Is it a total collapse, a governmental collapse, a religious collapse, a cultural collapse? Because it would be so hard to hit all of them. It's just so hard. The Imperium will live on in some form forever from this point on, or at least for tens of hundreds of thousands of years, just because of how many individual planetary histories are married to it by necessity. It's pretty fucking nuts. You'd have to have been an independent world for a good long time before the Imperium came along in order to have enough independent history to have something in your past you could look at that isn't just branded in skulls, golden thrones, and the Emperor. And there you go. That's just like my point.
Imperium is a wonderful creation, from its military to the Gothic architecture to the way it worships a dead god who explicitly told everyone he wasn't a god. It's all wonderfully grim and dark in the way 40k should be. I mean, look at this. Look at this. How could you not think this slaps? However, the Imperium is kinda dying. Really badly. Countless defeats, nothing but slowly losing territory to rebellion, xenos, and chaos, things that generally are not conducive to an empire surviving very long. I mean, Games Workshop tells us this all the time. These are the darkest times to be a man, galaxy very dangerous, yada yada yada. The thing is, that's what they tell us. That the idea is that the Imperium is on its last leg and is gonna finally fall any day now. But boy, it sure seems to be taking its time with the falling, isn't it? GW tells us the Imperium is a dying empire, but it never really shows in the grand scheme of things. Kaivis Kane mentions offhandedly how how there's never enough soldiers to go around, but that came off more as him complaining about having to actually do his job than anything else, which, fair. I too understand having a stressful job of talking about things that I like. In practice, the Imperium usually wins because of the baseline humans of the setting. At least on a whole, I'm aware the Space Marines are anything but baseline humans. Therefore, they have protagonist rights to never ever lose, even if it makes sense for them to do so. Like how in every poorly made fantasy setting, elves and dwarves are objectively better than humans at almost everything, but humans win because the people reading are most likely human. But it's been about 40 years of the Imperium not falling in real life time, and 10,000 years of it not falling in Warhammer time. Or potentially even longer, because with the Great Rift, Games Workshop said screw it and stopped having everyone use the same calendar. And I think it's about time that dying empire got upgraded to dead empire. But what should kill it, you might ask? Chaos? Tyranids? The orcs? The elves finally not being punching bags despite having their very gods participate regularly on the battlefield? The answer here is yes, all of them, but also none of them and something else at the same time. I don't need to explain myself to you, but I will anyway in the name of getting more views and forever pushing off getting a real job. The Imperium's government is quite awful. Calling it inefficient, wasteful, and a huge mess would be like saying Scientology is a little bit like a cult. Because I refuse to read any Warhammer novels besides Caiaphas Cain or Gotrek and Felix, the Valhallan 597th is a regiment that regularly receives more than enough shipments of arms, armor, and manpower. This isn't because the Imperium is prospering and keeps up to date on its troops. It's because the Imperium never bothered to realize that the 597th is actually 2 regiments that combined into one when Tyranids ate half of each. Beyond that, entire planets can starve or be destroyed because the paperwork to send shipments or declare that they aren't actually heretical shit pits got lost in galactic levels of red tape. The military is all over the damn place. To its credit, the Guard honestly performs fine by itself. They go in, get the job done, and then go to wherever else they're needed. It's the Space Marines that are the issue for the Imperium. Now, what's coming up next isn't actually a complaint. It's honestly a really interesting thing in the lore. But a lot of the Space Marine chapters are more or less independent empires from the Imperium as a whole. They have their own traditions, heraldry, and quite frankly, usually ignore whatever actually needs to be done for the Imperium and focus on their chapter's own interests. Here's looking at you, Dark Angels. In fact, one thing I read straight up says that the Imperium is giving more and more planets over to the Space Marines to control directly, which is not something that usually happens in a government strong enough to handle the matter itself. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the source despite looking into it, and quite frankly, I don't remember if it was the intro to a book, a line of dialogue, or the entire premise of a novel I read in a summary. So you'll have to accept the citation of dude, trust me on this one. Beyond bureaucratic garbage that only interests people who own.
So that's interesting that he mentions that, like how the Space Marines are individual little empires, and it really feeds into the point I was talking about earlier. Yes, functionally, the Space Marines are not beholden to the Imperium. They don't pay the Imperial tithe. They aren't beholden to the orders of Imperial governors by and large, unless they come like from fucking Segmentum Command or something equivalent. And even then, it's more like a request, honestly. The Space Marines are supposed to sort of govern themselves for the most part, outside of like the High Lords of Terra giving them direct orders and things like that. And even then, it's really fucking... It's more like it's bad form to ignore those orders, even though you kind of totally could. Like, until the Inquisition comes along and declares your ass heretical, you can do almost anything as a Space Marine organization. I think the what are they called? The Malice Marines or something like that. They kind of like show that off in spades. So why am I mentioning this? What is the whole point of this? Well, functionally, Space Marines aren't even part of the Imperium. They're like close allies to the Imperium, but they have their own governmental systems, their own economies, their own tithing systems. The planets that they control directly do not typically contribute directly to the Imperium. They contribute only to the Space Marines, unless the Space Marines have some sort of trading agreement set up with nearby Mechanicus Forge worlds or various things. But even then, Space Marine chapters are entitled to things from the Imperium. They're entitled to weapons that are made on worlds they don't own. They're entitled to power armor. They're entitled to escort fleets out of Imperial docks. They're entitled to all this stuff. But at the same time, they can't really give orders to the Imperium, and the Imperium can generally only make requests of the Space Marines. So how the fuck does this work? It works because even though functionally the Space Marines are independent empires of their own, they don't see themselves that way. Not typically. Yes, they recognize that there is a separation of powers. Yes, they recognize that they are not, insofar as a standard organization of the Adeptus is considered, part of the Imperium as a whole, not by and large in a standard fashion, but in their minds, unless you're talking about like a renegade chapter or a very unconventional chapter, Space Marines see themselves as more part of the Imperium than the actual fixtures and structures of the direct Imperium. It's cultural and sometimes even religious. And it's this cultural religious adherence that makes them functionally, even though while they are functionally not part of the Imperium, they functionally are. Despite everything, despite their entire control structure they operate under. And it's because they believe that they are part of the Imperium. It's because they act that way out of a consistent belief that they are either as much a part of the Imperium as anyone else, or more often, much more a part of the Imperium than anybody else. So that goes to illustrate how even now the structures of the Imperium are gangly. They're not held together by the structures of government that we have in the world today, by and large. They're held together largely by sheer raw weight of cultural identity. It's fascinating, but it's weird to think about how that breaks exactly, more than it's already broken. Like, let's not pretend the Imperium doesn't war with itself on a literally regular basis.
I ironically think Attack of the Clones was a good movie, the Imperium is overextending itself. Much like me when I try to reach something on a high shelf. Thank you my mother for being 5'1", and damn you my father for being 6'6" and not giving me those genes. You ever notice how each of the enemies of the Imperium individually could probably be handled? Like how there aren't enough Dark Eldar to meaningfully attack the Imperium on their own, or the Orcs are too disorganized on their own to completely destroy mankind. Tragically for mankind, all of these threats exist simultaneously, and fully dealing with one would mean the others would capitalize on it. Doesn't matter if you blow up a tomb world if the Tyranids vor the planets you had to leave defenseless. Mankind faces overwhelming odds, inefficient government, and generally just kind of has the cards stacked against it. It's high time for the Imperium to finally fall. And bring humanity with it, right? Get rid of the Marines and Imperial Guard and all of them, surely. No, you fool, all those armies would be fine. Why would they go anywhere? See, I think there's a problem with people saying destroy the Imperium. Usually, at least from what I've seen when it's brought up, it's equated with mankind going the way of Warhammer Fantasy and being destroyed by chaos, or the Tyranids devouring everyone, or some other complete extinction deal. But that's not what would or should happen in this scenario. The Imperium should fall, sure, but mankind shouldn't and wouldn't go down with it. Here's what I think is the best direction for 40k to go in with regards to the Imperium. Maybe you agree, maybe you think I'm cracked in the head, but here goes. The scenario I'm picturing would go as thus. As the Imperium is going on as it has been, that is to say barely holding on, something triggers catastrophic and widespread revolt. Maybe a word about chaos gets out at large, since the Imperium tries to keep that information away from the average person. Maybe people realize how widespread certain threats like the Tyranids and Orcs really are. Or maybe it's something simpler, like the Imperium taxing its citizens even more than normal to help fight all these threats until it reaches a breaking point. Kind of a boring way for all of this to happen, but hey, it worked for George Washington, didn't it? Either way, mankind fractures. Instead of the Imperium being a somewhat unified whole, now dozens if not hundreds of successor states are cropping up throughout the galaxy. Some claim to be the Imperium's true successors, some are happy to be entirely separate entities, and hell, the one that still holds Terra could rightfully call itself the Imperium of Man proper, so you can keep all the old iconography and stuff. At the end of the day, what matters is that the cat's out of the bag and now mankind is truly divided. The benefits of the Imperium falling are several-fold. That's how you know I'm serious. I'm breaking out words like several-fold. First off, an easy one is that it will give some actual narrative backing behind Imperium armies fighting each other on the tabletop. Sometimes you see someone playing a game of Guard versus a Marines and you go, wait a minute, that ain't right. It doesn't really make sense for the armies of mankind to be at each other's throats like this when they're supposed to be united. And yes, I know it's 40k and common sense is in shorter supply than pretty much anything else, but if the Imperium fractures into numerous squabbling empires, then you don't need to just resort to it's 40k so it's just like that as an explanation.
So yeah, this is kind of like what I was saying before, but he hand waves the thing that would actually cause the Imperium to crack. And no, I don't think that word getting out about chaos would do it, because honestly, I don't think that like people would be as eager to abandon the Emperor and join these demons as a lot of people seem to think. You know, yeah, things look horrific in the Imperium, but the raw, literally demonic anarchy that chaos wraps itself in is pretty horrifying at face value, and simple people will take face value things as what they are. And funny enough, with chaos, what you see is largely what you get. So chaos is not very marketable. It's often not very palatable. it can take on much more palatable forms, and we've seen that. But it can also take on hideously unpalatable forms, and that would have just as much of an effect in the repulsion area, like repulsing people away from it, as much as the lure would have luring people towards it. I think that it would take a bit more than just word of the Chaos Faiths getting loose. In fact, I think that if that was all that it took, the Imperium would have fallen a long time ago. The Inquisition is always scrambling. They may have ultimate authority, but they have far from ultimate control. So, in any case, what was I going to say about this, though? Right, so he's hand-waving what it is that would cause this to happen. And honestly, from where I'm sitting, there's only one thing that would cause this to happen en masse. There really is only one thing. Because you really have to, the scale of the Imperium is very hard to wrap your brain around. It's as macro as it gets. So it would take much more than what is typically thought of. But because everybody, that's the thing, largely everybody would still be calling themselves the Imperium. Largely, this would be the case. I mean, there may be thousands of planets that came in late or had proud planetary histories that have been kept and reserved even after Imperial takeover and occupation. This is possible, but that's thousands compared to millions. There are going to be millions of planets that have histories that are either rewritten or cleansed to only include the Imperium and the benefits brought on by the Great Crusade and the conquest of the planet, or the collection of the planet, or joining of the planet. Not all of them were conquered. But my point is just that a lot of these worlds got actually initially taken during the Great Crusade. The bulk of the Imperium was made during the Great Crusade. And that means that those planets have 10,000 fucking years and plus more of Imperial history and Imperial dogma and Imperial everything. So they're culturally Imperial. Everyone's going to be Imperial. Nobody's going to sit here and say they're not Imperial. So, I mean, not nobody, but the vast majority of this world system is going to be that way. This is just how humanity is. It requires something drastic to change that. Now, one thing that could change that is a gradual cultural decay, but that takes time, hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years. For empire this large, almost certainly thousands of years, and we don't have thousands of years to spend to get there. In the modern day Imperium, we're clearly not at the point of cultural decay. People are proudly Imperial everywhere. The Imperium's culture and faith are strong right now. I don't see them weak. I don't see previous ages having stronger culture towards the Imperium, like pro-Imperial culture, or having stronger pro-Imperial faith. I think that right now we're actually maybe at one of the apexes of that. So I don't see that happening. Cultural decay, nah, not going to happen. And as for the more boring but somewhat more realistic take of taxes or mismanagement or whatnot, if that were going to happen, it would have happened already. And the reason I say that is because right now we have Guilliman in the setting. Guilliman. Robute Guilliman. And with Guilliman now in the setting, Guilliman is a bureaucrat. And he's the best one ever created. It would make no sense that now, of all times, the lines get drawn for an arbitrary reason, even though things can only be getting better and more efficient with Guilliman managing the resources of the Imperium. So that would be unsatisfactory for me as a reason as to why the Imperium would collapse, because it should have happened already. We've had 10,000 years. It's not like the Imperium is getting a tremendous amount less efficient than it's already been for several hundreds or thousands of years already. It's like we've been scraping the bottom of the barrel for a good long time now. And now we've suddenly got something there that's much better. So it makes no sense for that to be the deficiency, in my opinion. But a deficiency that, not a deficiency, but something that could cause the Imperium to split is the weak vice point of all of these empires, and that is a powerful centralized authority in the form of the High Lords of Terra, and more importantly, the fascistic tendency of these kinds of governments to not have clean systems of transference, especially if you get hit big. So let's say that through various things, the council, the High Lords of Terra are killed either all at once or within a short amount of time and need to be replaced before they're able to begin replacing each other. So, like, from the time the first of the High Lords of Terra dies and the last one dies, there wouldn't have been enough time to elect a new first High Lord of Terra from the first one who died. That's what I mean. Like, in that timetable, which I think is actually pretty broad, because new High Lords aren't typically chosen very quickly when they're needed. It's a process. It's a political battle. And if it happens out of nowhere, if no one's there to expedite it, then it's not going to be expedient. At least I don't have a reason to believe that it would be. So, if you could kill the High Lords of Terra and potentially damage the Senatorium around them from which the new High Lords might be drawn, or the Senatorium that would elect the new High Lords through their system, or what have you, if you could damage those two structures, suddenly everybody with enough power can call themselves the new capital of the Imperium, or at least the true High Lords of the Imperium. You know, they can go back to their own worlds, fortress up, gather alliances of their own, because now what's at stake here isn't really who is who or what's the Imperium or anything. It's who gets to call the shots in the Imperium we're all referring to ourselves as. And now the planets that wanted to be independent, the planets that got caught up like after the Great Crusade or that managed to keep their original planetary culture, can revert to those cultures much more safely, because now the bulk of the Imperium won't come down around them if they choose to rebel. There's too much going on. It's all fragmented now. High Lords are trying to reestablish their own power. But even in regards to this, there are a lot of fail-safes that the Imperium could employ to stop this from happening. The Custodians, especially the Eyes of the Emperor, could very well take action, assassinating and promoting specific people to build a coalition government out of the wreckage that is there and quickly reestablish the Imperium. You have to remember that there are several superhuman forces that are there to factor all this in. And of course, even if you destroyed the High Lords of Terra and decimated the Senatorius, or the Senatorum, you have Guilliman. Guilliman is still there. He's the Lord Commander of the Imperium. He may not be able to simply appoint new High Lords, but he can say, okay, well, until new High Lords are appointed and until the system gets back on track and I can verify it all, I am de facto ruler of the Imperium. And I still think that would cause a lot of fragmentation. You know, people are always wary of the next Horus, but I don't think it would fragment nearly as much, especially given that Guilliman is pretty charismatic. And I think that while it would cause a huge issue and lots of planets would die and the Imperium would shrink and contract as a result of this, I don't think it would actually defeat the Imperium. You'd have to get rid of Guilliman, decimate the High Lords to the last one, and then greatly damage and disperse the Senatorium. And if you can do that, then it's almost a given that the Imperium will fracture like a fucking plate. The only thing then would be like, okay, well, technically, I think that Terra would become a massive battleground, because it would then become sort of like how the daimyos would war with each other in Japan for the title of shogun and to own the shogunate. None of them directly contended with the emperor. Everyone ostensibly worshipped the emperor, and everyone ostensibly respected the emperor's power and the emperor's authority as emperor of all of Japan. But, you know, in Japan, it was a figurehead position for a good long time while the shogunates were in power. And in the Imperium, the emperor is silent, so he can't really decide anything. So likely, armies would suddenly show up at Terra, fighting in the Sol system, fighting viciously for control of the throne world. And whoever could effectively control the throne world would have the cultural oomph to declare themselves the regent of Terra and the regent of the Imperium, and therefore perhaps pull together. See, that's the funny part, is that then you still have a way that the Imperium can kind of recover by simply having a winner take over Terra and use that uncontested control to declare themselves Lord of the Throne World, Regent of the Imperium. And that has a lot of clout. I think that a lot of worlds would capitulate over to that authority. It makes a lot of sense. And you have to remember, it's not just about power, hunger, and politics, but it's about religion. There's a religion all around this. So people will act in in good faith or faithfully towards what they think the Emperor would desire and what they think would work insofar as genuine control of the Imperium is concerned, and the control of the throne world and effectively of the Imperial Palace would symbolically be probably the biggest gesture a person could make in reference to, I am the regent of the Imperium. The Imperium will reform around me and my authority structure. That would probably work, even if the Imperium did shrink and contract greatly as a result of this chaos. But the Imperium is resilient. It's going to be at that size and at that age. There's no other choice. It's so caked on. All right, so let's check out more.
You could have actual, meaningful reasons for human armies to fight each other. It could be them fighting for resources or because of significant ideological reasons that wouldn't be delved into with any level of detail, with the Imperium being a technically united entity. It's even more noticeable when it's Marines versus Marines. You see Dark Angels and Blood Angels fighting on the tabletop, and it's like, why? Is it who gets the right to use the word angel in their name? There are literal demons from hell in the star system next over. You do have better things to be doing right now. But when the Imperium is no more, all bets are off. Hell, you don't even need a reason to fight if the Imperium's fractured. Everyone belongs to different empires. Gotta fight the other guy because he's the other guy. Now that's a good 40k reason. It can bring some diversity into the Imperium as well. And I don't just mean a new guard model or two. Entirely differing heraldries and beliefs mean that differing appearance and motivations for fighting would crop up, and the lore could reflect this. For a good example, look at fantasy. The Empire, Bretonia, and Cathay are all human empires, but they have radically different, well, pretty much everything. You can immediately tell who's who, be it the pike and shot formations of the Empire, the majestic jade warriors marching under the shadow of animated statues, or how you reflexively vomit whenever you look at a Bretonian knight. That's what the Imperium fracturing could bring to 40k. With no more Imperium to hold it back, humanity can truly flourish into a variety of different cultures that feel truly different instead of what we currently have. Sure, Katakan and Cadian soldiers act differently and perform their own roles in combat, but at the end of the day, it's the same overall shtick for each of them: kill and die for the Emperor. Now imagine in this scenario, there could be multiple differing human empires fighting over different interpretations of what the Emperor really is. Or you know what? Screw that. Have a fight between a side loyal to the Emperor and a side fighting in the name of an entirely different religious system. The Catholic space YouTube bad word guys fighting the Shinto space samurai. You could have some sectors ruled over by inquisitors turned kings in their own right, and other sectors devoted to literally any of the dozens of governmental systems we've come up with in history. And of course, this could very well be the perfect way for more models, and not even just for no.
See, the funny part is that that's already happening. Like almost everything that he's mentioning here, it already happens. I mean, Inquisitors do this already. They just don't need to declare it and separate from the Imperium. In fact, that makes them weaker. Why? You've cut out your little empire in the Imperium effectively. You have all this authority here. You've been the kingmaker in this entire system, and therefore are the king. And why declare war with the rest of the Imperium? What exactly does that get you? I mean, yeah, the rest of the tithe needs to get paid, but in general, even that gets controlled by you as long as you're the closest Inquisitor to it. But this happens. Like, it's funny, but a lot of what he's saying already happens in Warhammer. It's really funny. But yeah, even if we took this and had the Imperium collapse, the Inquisitors who are becoming these kings in their own little star systems would largely draw that authority from having the Emperor's authority religiously applied to them. Inquisitors are the word of the Emperor, a la the Spanish Inquisition and yada yada. So it's funny, but like, we're already kind of there. It's just that GW doesn't like to portray it a lot. Like, the lore tends to stagnate when it's held just by the IP holder and isn't grown by anybody else because they're scared of taking certain steps, want to keep the brand a certain kind of identical. Fucking business gets all up in it. But in reality, if we actually look at a realistic look at the Warhammer 40k universe as it's described to us, especially in the books and stuff, it's a lot less homogenous than it would appear from like the art.
Normal human armies based on the Guard. Imagine what the mechanics would get up to the moment there's no longer an Imperium telling them what not to do. The amount of tech heresy they would commit immediately would be frightening, and this could lead to all sorts of crazy new units and models to field. Or
that's sort of a misrepresentation of how the Mechanicus works. The Imperium does not keep the Mechanicus from performing tech heresies. In fact, the Imperium wouldn't even know how to identify a tech heresy if it came across it. That's all the Mechanicus, bruh. That's all the Mechanicus. They choose to do that. The Mechanicus choose to enforce that tech heresies are a thing. The Mechanicus choose to enforce what is and is not a tech heresy. They are the only ones who police themselves in that regard. I guess sometimes Space Marines may be educated enough to also recognize when a tech heresy is being committed, but by and large, the Mechanicus regulate themselves. If the Mechanicus became independent of the Imperium, it would probably also shatter just like the Imperium is shattering, because the Mechanicus is also supposed to be like an allegory for the Catholic Church. And I don't know, it's just like, it's so interwoven with the Imperium. I'm not sure they would even want to separate so much from these planets that are already relying on them so much, because you have to understand, the Mechanicus doesn't stand to lose too much from the loss of Imperial support. I mean, yeah, the Imperial Guard armies are great, but we have Skitarii for that, and we can make them en masse. It's more the case that the problem would be that it's like, okay, well, these other worlds kind of need us, and more than that, especially now that they're not paying a big-ass tithe or anything like this, just some big central government, they need us, and we control them because of it. Their machines don't work without us. Before now, it's been this sort of mutual system that we have set up via treaty, but now that it's not that way, we can just declare ourselves lords of this entire world through the grace of the Omnissiah and our knowledge of machinery. And literally, reality will enforce our dominion, because if we stop working, their entire world stops working. So it would be very interesting to see how that works and how that goes down. But the Mechanicus, I don't think they would just suddenly begin performing tech heresies all over the place, left, right, and center. That would have to be a different split within the Mechanicus. That would have to happen at the same time that this is happening with the Imperium. It would involve the Mechanicus itself shattering like a plate. Because I guarantee you that if we do make room for these tech heresy factions who want to perform tech heresies to exist, just like there's a central Imperium, there's a central Mechanicus. And that central Mechanicus and its religious beliefs will be carried forward and enforced by many other Mechanicus worlds who agree with it. Heck, even several worlds that would rebel from the authority of Mars as a central government would still choose to enforce the doctrine and religion of the Omnissiah in the way that they had seen it before. It's funny because in 40K they have the fucking government and the religious systems all fucking entangled and mixed up together, and it's messy. That's why we don't like that. But one thing that it also leads to is a weird homogeneity, where, yeah, these two systems may decide to fight each other and hate each other, but because their religions are so similar, they work and act functionally extremely similar, like very close to what you see in a lot of the early wars in Europe. When you had all these, like France and England attacking each other, and it's like, yeah, they have a different culture, but a lot of their technology and lineage is very similar, if not the same. So it would be very akin to that. And I don't think it would result in a bunch of immediate tech heresy, because there would have to be a desire to do that already, and then the system that is repressing it would have to break down, and that system isn't the Imperium, it's the Mechanicus itself. So that would have to shatter.
At the very least, we just get a few new models for the Guard themed around something other than Starship Troopers. Speaking of the Mechanicus, they could get a much more prominent role. They could go from being only technically subservient to, but certainly no more than equal to the other Imperial powers, to being the strongest human faction by far. After all, it doesn't matter if you hate them and what they stand for when they're the only people who can make the guns and ammo you need to not get drowned in orcs. They can be the arms dealers to every empire, funding proxy wars to keep themselves ahead of everyone else and becoming something greater than what they were within the Imperium. Of course, on the flip side, with no more overseeing Imperium to help the Cogboys find out when some upstart decides to do some sciencing without consulting the tech priests first, maybe individual planets can achieve a level of technology far in advance of what the overall Mechanicus would have allowed otherwise. As for the Space Marines, there's all sorts of things you can do with them. Guilliman and Ultramar can finally become a fully fledged Byzantine Empire in space, with the 500 worlds becoming the strongest successor. All of the chapters can form their own empires, some allying with each other and others becoming hated enemies now that the grudges they've always held are no longer kept in check. Someone can finally just wipe out the Space Wolves now that no one's going to come to their Maybe some chapters will outright ally with the Eldar, Tau, and other miscellaneous Xeno species. Some chapters might straight up go back to being legions. With no more Imperial decrees to keep them separate, the Dark Angels and Imperial Fists would almost certainly go back to being one massive unified army. So the scale of 40k battles wouldn't even need to shrink here just because the Imperium shattered like stained glass. Of course, the biggest upside with the Imperium dividing is that all of the threats in the galaxy will become, actually threatening. The best example here is the Tau. Now, I like the Tau. They're cool. Them being the rising empire to the Imperium's failing one and the Eldar's dead one is interesting. The problem is that as things stand, there's no way in hell they can meaningfully take anything on. They're ants compared to all the other major factions in the galaxy. Like how one time the Tau went to a hive world and saw that it had more humans on it than the Tau had, Tau than in all of their space. As it stands, they're in a position to have a moderately impactful last stand at best. But then you take that unified Imperium and crush it into tiny, tiny pieces. Yes, I'm reusing Carillion, leave me be. And suddenly there's no massive empire for those planets that border the Tau to call for aid to. There's just a bunch of squabbling states who have as much to gain from your demise as they do from your continued existence. All of a sudden the Tau go from something that, let's be honest with ourselves, is barely worth worrying about to the next superpower in the galaxy, because every planet they take only makes that snowball roll faster. They don't even need to conquer like everyone else. They just gotta roll up and say, hey, that awful empire that oppressed and abused you before we came in, we're better in every way. Here's proof. Why not join us? Whether or not the Tau are actually super oppressive in their own way is meaningless. Their diplomacy worked on planets before the Imperium cracked apart, and it would certainly work after the fact. Of course, this isn't just my love letter to the Tau. The Orcs would gain a massive level in their threat because when humanity is almost as disunified as them, it's just leveling the playing field. It doesn't matter, the best they can do is run straight into your gun line when you suddenly lose the unlimited supply of manpower that you had backing up. They're gonna win eventually. Same for the Tyranids. They might finally win a single battle if the Imperium broke apart. Probably just some no-name Space Marine chapters and a few backwater planets, but hey, at this point a win's a win for the Tyranids. Chaos can finally get a win that doesn't turn into a loss, like when splitting half the galaxy in half with ghost storms just let the Emperor set Nurgle's house on fire before he pissed it out. I know Chaos winning makes me unhappy, but even I gotta admit they've been on the losing front for just a bit too long. Now Abaddon doesn't need to carve his way through the beast that is the Imperium, just countless lesser states far less capable of opposing him. The least interesting development to come out of this will be whatever the Necrons do, because they seem fine as is, but if nothing else, they get scarier too, and that's a good thing. And that's probably just me being unimaginative. I bet there's loads of things you could do with them I'm just not thinking of, like certain human civilizations allying with them. See, there's something. And my precious space elves, the craft worlds can finally do meaningful things again because humanity no longer has the entire galaxy to throw at them when they try to do something important. Sweet Lord, would this be glorious to behold? No repeat of the Death Watch ruining Iniad for everyone because there's no power structure for them to work with. And the Dark Eldar would go from nuisance to major threat against...
I'm sorry, man. If you think the Death Watch aren't gonna just show up and fuck things up just because the power structure has collapsed, you're already vastly overestimating how efficient the Imperium's current power structure is. The Death Watch get things done because they're an organization largely composed of transhuman super soldiers that are allowed to do whatever the fuck they want. Now, they may not exist if the Imperium collapses, but Space Marines that have that mentality will. And even if they're all still wearing the same color, trust me, some racist piece of shit is still gonna kick down your door and tell you, I'd rather every last human burn in fucking hell than we help pointed ear motherfuckers even one fucking time! That's gonna happen. That's gonna happen. You're not gonna avoid that. I'm sorry, my friend. Lots of things would happen here, but that is still gonna happen. It's not. That's not gonna change. That's gonna stay consistent. I'm sorry, Zeech. You don't get this one.
It's the Imperium at large, same as the Tau, they're barely worth the trouble to deal with. They can kidnap a whole planet at once, big deal, there's a trillion more to spare. But that means a lot more when there's no empire with a trillion planets. Who knows, if the Imperium as a whole is out of the picture, the Eldar might be able to resurface as a proper empire once more. Certainly nowhere near what it was, but who's to say that without the bulk of mankind to stop them, they wouldn't rise from the ashes. The best case scenario would be one of their...
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry to have to stop you again. The idea is cool. It is. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying. But humanity is not what is keeping the Eldar from reunifying their empire. Fuck. A craft world can usually sneak past entire Imperial battle fleets without even being noticed even a little bit. Eldar, like... it's weird because they get to have little utopian societies because they're so scattered, so spread out, and there are enough of them, and their ships are highly technological enough that, by and large, it's kind of rare that things confront them in a way that is terminal, and they have to deal with it, and they can't just disappear and vanish out of fucking thin air and run away. Eldar, when they lose engagements, 9 times out of 10, they're engagements that the Eldar left where they were from to go do a thing at. You get me? Yes, they do have defensive battles. Yes, Eldar craft worlds are attacked and destroyed. But that happens a million times less often, less commonly, than a human world is attacked, whether it's destroyed or not. Eldar civilians that live 1,000 fucking years or more could live 1,000 years on a craft world that isn't attacked even one fucking time. Because they have so much to work with. No. The Eldar don't unite into a big empire, and their empire doesn't rise from the ashes because of what really keeps them down. And what really keeps them down is themselves. Seriously, it's themselves. They have communications technologies. They have incredible automated food technologies. They literally carry around utopia ships for the most part. Like, these craft worlds cater to their entire needs, and an Eldar's life is allowed to be less about actual survival and more about self-actualization through various, like, centuries and eons and shit. That's so much more than we get. They could become an empire today if the craft worlds decided that they were going to have one leader and do that kind of thing. Mankind doesn't stop them from doing that. At best, mankind shattering would make the Eldar go, well, I guess we can't rely on the Monkai to save us from the Ranadandra, I guess, so let's start doing it ourselves? The Eldar are their biggest problem. They've always been their own biggest problem, and they are the reason they don't unite. The humanity does very little in regards to that aspect of it. Maybe situations would arise from mankind splitting and dividing that would make the Eldar Empire more tasteful or desirable to the craft world Eldar. It's hard for me to imagine why, because honestly, if I were to ask an Eldar, hey, why haven't you guys united into a big united empire yet? Like, why not start it up again? I get the impression that the craft world Eldar would say something like, well, the old Eldar Empire led us to ruin and the creation of Slaanesh, and also everybody who remained a part of it, or at least most everybody who remained a part of it, got destroyed by their own unity and got fucking demon blasted at the start of the fucking Eye of Terror. So, because of that, we've just decided that united empires of that size and scale are a bigger liability than they are a benefit, an asset, and therefore, since we don't see it as a strength, we see it as a weakness, we simply won't use it, even if we get really desperate, unless most of us are so decimated that our numbers get that low. And that's sort of like the impression I get that the Eldar have as far as an ideology or philosophy in regards to them becoming one big Eldari empire. But even if that's not the case, even if there are lots of craft world Eldar out there who want to become a semblance of their old strength in the form of an empire, it isn't the humans that are keeping that from happening. It's definitely the Eldar. It's all in their court. Ball's in their court. They could get together if they wanted to. We're not really stopping that from happening. I'm guaranteeing you. They have so much technology to work with, especially the craft worlders. It's like, crap.
Their gods returning somehow, probably Isha, but I don't know how this would happen, and even without that, they'd at least get some more breathing room. I'm pretty sure I'm out of crackpot reasons for why this would be a good thing, but if you have any, please let me know. Believe it or not, this isn't bait, but my unfiltered dogshit opinion, so maybe someone shares it. Either way, thanks for watching and getting me this far. YouTube is something that's entirely reliant on people giving the creator a chance. I can't say enough how happy and appreciative I am of everyone who's given me that chance. From these wonderful channel members donating their hard-earned money to everyone who just watches my shit, thank you all. Till next time, take care.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a very interesting scenario. I think I said a lot about it, and I had a lot to say about it. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that would make a very interesting set of stories. Though, even for me, it would be so many fucking stories. I mean, even deciding how many empires the Imperium would break into would be a full-time thing. But yeah, he's right about a bunch of stuff here, and he's definitely right about what he said there at the end. YouTube's all about people giving you a chance. Speaking of which, seamless transition, my Kickstarter is up, my comic books are out, they're for free, you can check them out in the links down below. please check them out. This is my chance if you're willing to help give it to me. And it's going really well right now. I just need to make it to the finish line if I can. Remember, I can only keep any of that money if the goal actually gets met. So with your support, I'm hoping I can actually get into this industry and write for a living, which would be very, very, very fun. But in any case, that aside, this was an interesting video. You'll see more reaction content from me as the week goes by. And until then, I'll see you next time.